we must divide up our mission, in my mind, into two simple pieces. One is making sure that our church members are as spiritually strong as possible. They are loving Jesus and they are sharing him with their friends and neighbors. How do we do that? That's all part of the renewing faith piece. And then the restoring hope piece, which is the renewing faith and restoring hope, is going to be the theme you're going to be hearing about in the next couple of years, really. And the restoring hope is, what are we doing to bring hope to our neighborhoods, our communities, our towns, and the towns that don't have any Adventist presence. And it actually came during my devotional time from this, and I won't read the whole thing. You probably already read it, but I just wanted to do that first little bit there. Therefore, we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. And I'm telling you, when I saw that, it was like I heard renewing faith. And then I just started praying, and the restoring hope piece came, and that's where all of this got launched. So I want to share with you tonight, in just a few moments here to begin with, what does renewing faith and restoring hope look like practically? What are we going to do in 2022 and push into 2023? Here's some projects that we've been working on. The first is reviewing our beliefs, providing resources for personal spiritual growth, such as the Renewed Faith Bible Study Initiative. The conference is looking for ways to resource you. We want to do everything we can do to give you resources that will help with both the renewing faith and the restoring hope. And this is one that we've just rolled out recently. And this morning I shared it with the Hardin Church when I was there meeting that church family for the first time. And some of you have seen this in your foyer. I don't know if I should put you on the spot, but has anybody seen this board that's like a sign up for Bible study board? Anybody seen that yet? All right, we've got some of you that have seen it. The pastors are rolling this out little by little, but it's the idea that we're encouraging all of our church members to go through the new Voice of Prophecy Bible study series as part of your renewing faith. I've had church members tell me, Pastor Ken, I haven't gone through a Bible study series since 20 years ago when I was baptized. And we've done this project in the past. I did this in Guam Micronesia Mission, and it was amazing to see the to see the baptisms that took place and the Bible studies that were kicked up with friends and neighbors who were not even part of the church family. So we're really excited for this to roll out, and all of your churches will be receiving the lesson study sets for every member that is in your church. And so there'll be more information coming out about that. Rediscovering community, small group training for fellowship and evangelism. I'm passionate about small groups because being together in a circle in somebody's home after a good meal and studying the Bible and talking about real life experiences is transforming. My wife and I had the privilege of baptizing 7 young people between the age of 16 and 21 from a Friday night Bible study that we did every week. And it was just a small group format. And I've seen beautiful things happen as the gospel spreads through communities by this. So we've done a training in Bozeman for the churches in that area. They are implementing that. Could tell you stories about what's happening on that side, but there's another training coming up in Ronan for the churches on that side, and I would love to come out to the east side and do a training, have all the resources and materials, but would love to help you know how you can start a group in your home on Friday night and invite young people or others to come. But this is something that we want to give you as many resources as we can on that. Reimagining how we do church. Internet connectivity and technology upgrades for all churches, and then redesigning and refreshing worship service formats. I found that a lot of our smaller churches, as I've traveled around Montana, some don't even have an internet connection to the church because it's expensive, right? I mean, there's some challenges in many of our churches to be able to really connect if we want to stream or we want to do some kind of training. So we've set aside a budget at the conference office to help our churches get what you need to be able to join a Zoom session where we could do an elders training, we could do a deaconess training from the conference office and have all of our churches connected. And we'll be telling you more about that in detail, where we get everything set up so that we're all able to be on the same page. And I really feel like that's going to help us move forward in our mission. So we've already set aside money for that from the conference. So on the Restoring Hope side, what does this look like for our communities? Well, first, I think we need to begin with reclaiming former members. We've asked our pastors to look at all the membership list and to know how they can reach out to people who used to come to church that are still in your area. And that's something we're rolling out this year because we want our former members that maybe some of them stopped coming for reasons that weren't theological. It could have just been they slipped away, and especially during COVID. But this is something we want to make a big push for this year. Restarting Adventist Community Services. We have a whole idea about thrift stores that's starting to brew and blend, and I'm very excited about that. But I don't have time to give you details on that, but we really want to give you the resources to get ACS kicked back up. When I was a kid, it was always Dorcas, right? I always loved going to that place. It always smelled weird, like mothballs and musty, and but there was always dedicated church members in there folding clothes, and we want to be able to do something that's going to be able to really reach our communities in a way, and we've got some ideas on that. How do we restructure for mission? Realignment of pastoral duties, which is church districts becoming geographic districts for the purpose of establishing new work. So I've got 5 minutes left, and we're going to try to go through the rest of this quickly, but this is what the new Montana looks like according to the conference. This is exciting because our pastors are no longer 2 church district pastors or 3 church district pastors. They are now 25 town district pastors. And they're not to be alone in trying to reach these areas. We want you to work together with the pastors to have the responsibility to, I don't even know if this thing has a laser pointer, but over here on the right, the Miles Glendive, is 29,000 square miles. That's larger than 9 United States. Okay, that's a big area. And Pastor Michael Black was upset when we started moving that line a little away, giving him less area. He's like, stop. I want to reach that whole area with my elders and my churches. That's exciting. That's the kind of passion we're looking for. But these are this is kind of what it looks like new, and our pastors have already they helped to design this map. And so there's going to be neat things that are coming out for us to be able to help resource you with finances to reach each of these areas. Restructuring for mission. Pastors function as true district leaders by overseeing all church-related activities in their territories, that geographic district, church evangelism, training and equipping of members for soul-winning administrative oversight. Local elders function as primary spiritual caregivers for local congregations. Many of you have already been doing that, some of you for years, and you are doing an amazing job. We want to come alongside of you with resources and with finances to help you take your God-given gifts to the next level. We have some ideas about to do that, but that's how we restructure. Not only just here, but refocusing ourselves on cross-cultural and foreign missions, establishing and supporting gospel work on the reservations, and also sending and supporting Montana missionaries to the rest of the world. I'm sorry, you got a president that spent 15 years of his life overseas. I almost died twice. I am passionate about people who have never heard the name of Jesus hearing the name of Jesus. And the more I go around Montana, the more my brain is aligning with the fact that there are many of you who would be willing to maybe go yourselves and us support you, or give your finances to help us have our own missionaries from Montana. Wouldn't that be exciting? That at camp meeting, they're up front giving reports about the town they're reaching that has no Seventh-day Adventists in it or no Christians, and that we're able to help support them and send mission groups there and so forth. I can't wait to see that unfold. This is just a quote that Ellen White says, you want to have success in Montana? Then we have to be doing something overseas. It's that right there. The prosperity of the homework depends largely under God upon the reflex influence of the evangelical work in countries afar off. We've got to be involved in that, and we can do that on a small and then grow it to whatever scale. We want to reinvest ourselves in Adventist education, reopening closed schools. I shall not steal the thunder. Miss Renee is going to share some exciting things about some reopening schools and renewing our support from Mount Ellis Academy. And we're going to have a whole report on that in a moment. So what does revival and reformation in Montana Conference look like? It's reviewing our beliefs. It's rediscovering community through the small groups and the training, reimagining how we do church, reclaiming former members, restarting Adventist community services, restructuring for mission, reinvesting in Adventist education. Regarding what we as the conference officers and those of us that work in there, what do we see as our job in this next 2022? Revisiting and refining policies and procedures so that this machine called Montana Missions can go forward in a very streamlined, organized way. We know and we want to rebuild your trust. We want to be transparent in everything that we do. When it comes from finances, when it comes to anything, we are not afraid of any questions. We want to work together as a family. And we recognize that many times trust is built by the relationship of us showing all of these things and being clear on our intentions and what we want to do. And we really want to do that. And lastly, relying on God's leading and not ours for the completion of his mission in Montana. This is not about us. This is about his Spirit using not just us, but all of us to do what God wants us to do. And then this last quote, I won't read it, but I just want to start there right at the very beginning and just read this first part. A revival and reformation must take place under the ministration of the Holy Spirit. They're two different things. Revival is a renewal of spiritual life, and reformation is this piece of reorganizing yourselves. And that's what I would like to see us as a whole conference do together, and let God do the leading and we do the listening. So this is something we're excited about, and I want the rest of our team to share with you their departments, and let's go forward.
Anyway, I'm just going to share briefly on some of the different positions that I work with, and typically this graph would be 4 years if we had our constituency meeting every 4 years like we're supposed to, but we all know that we had a little wrench thrown in the spokes, and we're at 5 years for this constituency. And so what you're seeing there is a graph that reflects our membership over the last 5 years. And does that graph look a little weird to you? It's pretty what? Pretty flat. And I've said this in all of our town hall meetings up to this point. If that was in the medical profession, we would call ourselves flatlining, right? Which isn't a very good thing. And so there's a lot of things that go into that, but the one thing I think that we can realize as a conference is, do you think God can do better in Montana? Yeah, he can, and I think that's part of the vision that we're hearing is, I think God can do more through us as we are willing to move forward in what he's called us to do in reaching Montana. So this is just kind of a breakdown of the additions to our membership, and you'll notice that the way we grow the fastest right now in Montana is by what, according to that graph? By people transferring in. Now the thing we have to realize is you look at that and say, well, those bars should be gradually going up on the other chart that we had there, but the reality is for those that are transferring in, we also have those that transfer out. We have people who pass away, and there's a lot of things that happen to our memberships that it's not as easy as you baptize 10 people and the bar moves up 10. But wouldn't it be a cool thing that in the next few years, the blue part of that chart was bigger than the green part? That we were baptizing more than what we're transferring in. Here's a chart that shows where Montana is in the North Pacific Union, which is our union that we are a part of. This shows the reason why it's hard to grow, because there's a lot of things that happen over the course of a year, which this is. And you'll notice along with Alaska, Idaho, Montana is one of the 3 conferences that ended up with actually growth in the last year. There's a lot of things that go into that, but we can praise God for that, right? We look at things and we understand we can do better, but we also realize that the growth that is there represent people that God has brought into our church family, and that's a good thing, right? It's not about how many all the time, right? It's about the fact that every one of those numbers represents a person who has come to accept Jesus Christ. And so those are a little bit on our numbers. I want to introduce to you the Eastern Region pastors. Now, we're kind of bringing one over from the central, because what we're doing is building some pods of pastors where we're going to get together over the course of the year, not only in our pastors' meetings, but meet as pods in each of these regions. And Pastor Rene Marquez he is our pastor in the Belgrade and Livingston district, and kind of over the Big Timber part of the district, which is coming over this direction. But because of the fact that in eastern Montana right now in this region, we only have 2 pastors if we don't include him. So we're bringing him over just so it looks a little more occupied on the eastern side of the state here. Pastor Stephen and Pastor Michael are there as well. And I put this slide up here because this is an exciting thing for me, coming from just being a pastor up until August of this last year, is at the conference office, we have voted to give each of the pastors in our conference $15,000, basically of unrestricted funds. The only restriction really is that they meet with their elders and their church members in those areas and think about how can we go out and reach the people that are in our regions. Now, you all saw how big Michael's region is. He might be asking for $30,000, right, instead of 15, but we'll just give him 15 to start with. But as church members here, be thinking about what can we do, not just to reach the places where our church is in Billings or Miles City or Glendive or Hardin, but what about the areas around there? What about the little communities we haven't reached yet? And don't be afraid to share ideas with your pastor or with your elders so you can be coming together and figuring out a plan of how we can actually start to move this vision forward. Because if we do nothing with it and it's just a nice slide on the screen that we come and share every year at a town hall meeting, is it going to really accomplish anything? It's only as good as the effort that we are willing to put into it, and God will bless that effort. It's not going to be us at the end of the day, it's going to be God, but sometimes you have to take a step into the sea before he parts the waters, right? And I think God is waiting for us to move forward in that direction. For the next few slides here at the end of my presentation, for our constituency session that is coming up on April 10, that's a Sunday, and many of you are going to be there by God's grace. We go over the Constitution, and we're not going to go over the whole thing tonight. It's a rather lengthy document, but we are going to just give you a quick peek at the changes that are going to be there. Now, a couple weeks before the session happens, you'll be receiving a packet in the mail that will have the whole Constitution in it, and you can read it over. But we want to be, Elder Norton mentioned the trust and the transparency. We want you to know ahead of time what is going to be changed, and there's nothing drastic on here really. The changes are to meet us in the world that we live in right now with the COVID and other things. The first thing we're going to look at here is the preamble, and I will let you read that. I will tell you that between now and constituency session, this may or may not be part of the Constitution that we try to put before you. The reality is in this preamble, what we're trying to do with this is show a unity in how our church works. We're not a top-down church. We work at the lowest level, and the top is there to come alongside and support our local churches, right? We want that to be known in the way that we work through our Constitution. The other part of that, though, is understanding we're part of a worldwide church, right? We are Seventh-day Adventist Christians. And part of what this preamble really is talking about is working in unity as a church across the board. But understanding here in Montana, we have some unique things. Some of our small communities may not need the same kind of evangelism that is needed in some of the bigger states or bigger cities. And so we work within our own skin, right? But we work together as Seventh-day Adventists. And that's why that is there. And where that goes by the time of constituency, we will see how God leads there. We will go through the other part here. The changes that you see obviously are going to be in red. This is present or presence, attendance at a meeting, whether in person or by electronic means, unless otherwise provided in this document. All this is talking about is for someone to be present at a meeting in this day and age that we're living in. It could be virtual. You don't have to be in the room sitting with people. We are allowing for that to be either by Zoom or telephone or whatever, just so we can actually do business. There was a time with the pandemic where we couldn't be together, and this is looking forward and saying if this happens again, we want the ability to meet and do business. That's why we're on a 5th year for our constituency session instead of a 4th. In our Constitution, you're going to see we have the ability to actually meet even if we couldn't come together in person. This is just a simple thing, and we're showing you all of them. The executive committees of the General Conference, North American Division, and the North Pacific Union, they're not called board of directors, so we're just clarifying that there. In the event of exceptional and exigent circumstances, if you go on to read the rest of that, it allows us to go ahead and do what we did this year. We are meeting a year later than we were supposed to. This allows for that to happen. When we come together and have our constituency session on April 10th, technically we're going to be out of what? Out of policy, because we were supposed to meet every 4 years. We trust that you will bear with us and we will have a good constituency session in the 5th year, just like we would have in the 4th. This allows us to move that back a year if needed, if we hit those kinds of circumstances again. Virtual sessions, again, the delegates, just a little change there with the capitalization of the D. Virtual sessions, this is allowing us to do those meetings virtual. And the main thing here is that everyone that is present, whether they're in person or on a Zoom or some kind of a link, their voice is heard and they have the opportunity to cast a what? A vote. And that's the important part that is written into there. This is probably the most confusing part. We have a math teacher, Jerry Warnick, from up in Polbridge, some of you may know him, that is on our bylaws committee, and he read through this part of our bylaws and he said, you know what, I'm a math teacher and I don't have a clue what this is saying. And so you may read it quick and say we still don't have a clue about what we're saying, but the reality is we're just cleaning up the language so it's a little easier to read and figure out, because there's a formula that works our organizing committee numbers and so forth together to choose the nominating committee. And so this is how that formula actually looks, and this makes it easier. For the Western region, you have 1,584 members. According to what that big paragraph said before there, what we do is we divide that number by the total number of members in the conference, which is 4,065, and then we multiply it by 20, and that gives the Western region 8. You do the same with the Central region, and they end up with 9 delegates. And here is the goal for Michael and Pastor Stephen and whatever other pastors we get in the East. Wouldn't it be a cool thing if next time we came together, there was more delegates in the East because we just had a membership explosion? Because the East here doesn't have as many members, so it's 697 divided by 4,065 times 20, and you have 3 delegates that are there for the nominating committee, which, by the way, meets March 20th. Some of you might be on that as well. It meets there in Bozeman. So anyway, that is the formula that's very hard to spell out, but a little easier to look at that way, of how we get to our nominating committee. Moving forward, the section 4 here gives all of our committees, not just our constituency session, but all of our committees the opportunity to meet virtually, same language as we had above. And then on our board of directors, we have been operating for the last several years with 2 conference officers. Now we have Renee, who is our Vice President of Finance, myself, and Elder Norton, so there are 3 of us. Or Aaron, yeah, I just gave Renee a new position. Erin, I was looking right at her and called her Renee. That's good. Been a long day already, I guess. But anyway, with those three, you see in letter C there, we are moving from 2 to 3 conference executive officers that are on the board of directors. And then you go up to letter A. In doing that, we want to keep the proportions the same. If we're adding a conference employee, we're also going to be adding a layperson. And so our board of directors will go from 15 to 17, just adding an officer and a layperson. And again, this is for the board of directors. They used to, it just said we could meet by conference phone, which the board of directors has always done. This is just updating the language for the virtual meetings there. Again, emphasizing the votes cast by electronic means have the same validity as if they were there in person. And we've used that. We've had hybrid meetings where some of our board members are actually present and some of them are able to be in their homes when the weather's bad or whatever. This just has to do with the election of our officers and how that happens in election section 2 there. And as you come down, evaluation of officers, the North Pacific Union, as they were looking at our bylaws, thought that just having one survey or evaluation of the officers right before the constituency session wasn't enough. They recommended that we have one in midterm, and so we are writing that into our bylaws here. And then section 6, this is one by God's grace that never has to be dealt with, but if there is the need for termination for cause, this is just the language straight out of our church manual and how we deal with that. And then this is the Board of Education, same as the Board of Directors. We are just adding one of the executive officers, and because of that, then we add another layperson as well. And then the main thing here is we're looking at having 2 of those Board of Education members actually being parents that have kids in one of our schools, just to make sure we have that resource and information coming from our parents on that board. And then it's the last one we're looking at. This was from several years ago. Mount Ellis Academy was going to have an FM radio station. For whatever reason, it got put on our conference bylaws and some things that had to do with that. The radio station never happened. There's no plan in having a radio station. And even if that were to come again, it's really not meant to be in our bylaws in any way, shape, or form. So we're just deleting all of that. And I believe that brings me to the end, and we're on to our finance report.
I just want to start by saying I came over to the conference office in January of 2020. Have been doing kind of dual roles with the academy for the last couple of years, but it's been a blessing being on, just watching how God has blessed this conference in the tangible financial way that it has in the last 2 years. And I get the privilege of sharing with you guys good news, which is always a great thing coming from the finance office. This is our financial position. The top line, the pinkish color, is 2016, which is where we were at the last constituency. And the blue is where we were at in December. It shows kind of a point in time. To an individual, the top part would represent your house, your banking account, and the bottom part would represent your debt and your equity in that house. The one thing that I really want to point out is between 2016 and December of last year, our cash and investments and our unrestricted net assets, which is our ability to really move forward as a conference, have almost doubled. What that means, What that means is that between 2016 and 2021, we went from working capital about 3 months to 9.6 months. And our liquidity, our cash on hand, the ability to pay our bills at the conference office, went from less than a month at the end of 2016 to 7 months at the end of 2021. How we got there, this is our financial activity for the last 5 years, actually. I did include 2021 in here, which isn't audited yet, but should be by the end of March. And I wanted to show you that this is the activity over that last year's. In 2017, you can see that our expenses were higher than our revenues, and that we actually lost almost $500,000 or $500,000. By the time we get 2018 and 19, we kind of broke even made a little bit in 2019. In 2020 is when, unfortunately, we didn't, or the conference left a lot of districts open, and we saved or didn't have all those expenses. And at the same time, tithe began to increase dramatically. In 2020, we had $1.5 million gain. And in 2021, we almost hit $1 million, which is why we have the cash reserves that we have and the net assets and the ability to really, at this point, move forward in a new direction. Just briefly, I wanted to show you where our revenue comes from. This is over the 4 years. We should have had constituency, but so between 17 and 2020, in total, about 55% comes from tithe. Another 18 comes from program fees and cost sharing, which is our charges for elementary schools, our church functions that we share, and then other income, appropriations, and about 7% comes from other unrestricted donations. For our expenses, what we did for the last, from 2017, 2020, this conference spent about 28% on pastors and church ministries, 40% on education, 16% on administration, 9% on the retirement plan, which is payments we make for past employees, and then 7% on other non-operating kind of expenses such as depreciation. I did want to talk briefly about tithe. This shows the tithe for the last 10 years. As you can see, there was significant increases in 2020 and 21. Just our tithe for 2021 over last year, we raised about 5%. What I want you to note off of this graph the most is that the green line is inflation. That was about 18% over the last 10 years. But this conference over the last 10 years actually grown by about 45%. In the numbers, I don't know if you can quite read them, but our tithe per membership in 2020 for the Montana conference was $1,364. That's higher than the union, it's higher than the A&D, but what I really want to brag on is that I get reports that show all of the conferences in the NAD, and our number is in the top 5. I do get asked kind of where our tithe money goes. The first place that it goes is we share a little bit with the NAD and with the North Pacific Union. So we only retain about 76% here in Montana. It has been changing a little bit because we've been sending less to the NADDC. They've been changing those policies, and it's going down about 0.5% a year for the next several years. I do want to know also that of the money that we send up to the NAD and the MPUC, that we actually got back almost 50% or a little over 50% of that in appropriations for our elementary schools, for the academy, for evangelism, for different functions within the conference. This graph shows how we actually use the tithe over the last 5 years. And the line closest on the right, the blue one, is actually what we budgeted to use it for in 2022. The first section is pastors and Bibles workers. You'll see that in 2020 and 2021, those expenses were really low because of all of our open districts. But in 2022, as Elder Norton mentioned, in the last since November, we've hired 5 pastors, and in our budget for 2021 or 2022, we have all of our districts budgeted to be filled, and we're hoping to do that this year. I did just want to show you kind of a breakdown. This is how we are budgeting to spend tithe this year. About 27% is going to go straight towards covering our pastors and our Bible workers and other ministries. 16%, that's the tithe share that we do. And then 17% to administration, 11% to the retirement plan, 27% to education, and I did break education out because some people like to know that too, when we do about 10% to elementary, 10% to the academy, And then we have some administration costs and some that we send up to Walla Walla. One last thing I wanted to touch on is the conference advance or the budget. This is the offering that is in the tithe envelopes, the one that they call for once a month that I hear over and over again that people don't know what that's for. So I wanted to share that in 2022, the executive committee voted to allocate 40% of that directly to student scholarships at Mount Ellis Academy, 25% to elementary education, and then 35% to the conference ministry projects like the Bible studies and the technology, the ones that Elder Norton mentioned earlier. The other offering that we get money for at the conference level is for conference development. This is, I think, written in on your separately, but that money is separate from the conference advance budget, and that is specifically for capital type projects. We've helped the Popular Project, and we have set aside some money for the new house on Mount Ellis Academy's campus.
My name is Renee Young. I'm the educational superintendent, also the youth director here in Montana Conference. And this first picture here is just a recent picture of some of our educators. We went to a conference down in Texas. And I'll tell you, if you've never been around educators, there's something unique about them. Both of my parents were teachers, so I kind of grew up in it, but I realized later that not everybody is like this in other fields. But you get around teachers and even on their time off. So this is us here, and we are taking a history tour of the city. But we'd been in seminars all day, and they were really top-notch. But the teachers could not stop talking about business, about schools, about how they're going to reach their next student, how they're going to do better in their class, and what they're going to do. So the tour guy, he was talking, and we listened to some of those, but then we kept talking about what we were going to be doing in our schools. So it's really exciting to be around teachers. So I'm going to share a short little story with you tonight. I'm going to draw an interesting line between coffee, the Holocaust, and Adventist education. So starting off with coffee, the Nestle company, back in the maybe 30 years ago, they were trying to get their company into Japan with coffee. They weren't having much luck because Japan is a tea drinking, or was a tea drinking company. So how do you break into a market where nobody's really interested in coffee? Well, they tried several different things and they couldn't figure it out, so they hired a psychoanalyst who had been working with children in schools, children who had autism, and they said, we want you to come and help us figure this out, help us break into the market. And he said, well, I'm not that kind of a person. But he did. They must have offered him a lot of money or something, I don't know. But he went in there and they came up with a new strategy. They created candy that was flavored with coffee. So coffee flavored candy. And bam, 30 years later, coffee is now, was a drink that everybody's doing. The kids grew up and they want to drink coffee now instead of tea. So the Holocaust, and we all know kind of the progression there with the Holocaust, where Hitler's youth was trained. He saw the value of training young people in his ideology. Well, that's kind of a negative, but Adventist education, we go back to the Bible, and unfortunately, Proverbs 22:6 has become almost cliche. But it's so true. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. We have such a resource at our fingertips, our education. So the commonality between those three, you probably have already seen it. Each of those targeted children because they knew how important it was to reach the children for true change. For effective change, you reach the children. So what is our purpose in Adventist education? You know, we have Christian schools around in our cities, and actually I'm really thankful for Christian schools. We need God to be preached. We need the relationship with Jesus to be preached. And our public schools, well, they have good academics, don't they? Some public schools do. So, but why are we here? Well, I believe too, in addition to promoting our Christian values, we also have a framework to make sense of what's happening in the world around us. We have prophecy. We have all of that to offer our children. And Ellen White does talk about the end of times when there is an army of youth raised up to help promote the gospel during these end days. You know, I was sharing that at Kalispell last week, and afterwards, Josh Holloway, he helps me with Pathfinders. He came up and he said, you know, Renee, he said, that army of youth is already starting. He has a group there that they're starting to create little sermons and put them on YouTube and going around and helping other youth, teenagers, create these sermons. It's phenomenal. It was good to hear that. I'm not going to spend very much time on this. This was a chart of numbers that I had created for the board of directors a year ago about where our elementary schools stood. And a couple of our schools were closed at that time. And the school here was one of those. So I'm not going to go through all the numbers. You can just kind of look at it there. My primary purpose for doing that was when I was an interim principal over at Mount Ellis Academy, and I wanted to see what the outlook would be for students coming into the academy from just our schools. And it was lower than what we would like. But we also saw that there was a trend or a bulge of students that was in like the 3rd and 4th grade level. So until we get to that bulge, we're going to be a little bit thin. But this year, about the same time, the numbers have increased more than what I thought they would. So that's a good trend that's happening. And we do have Trailhead Christian School that's reopened this year, much to the dedication of the school board members. And I see a couple of them here as well. This current school year, we do have 2 other schools. It's been interesting that are wanting to reopen. The school in Missoula, called Mountain View, you see that it's closed this year. They had a school board that was continuing to meet, unbeknownst to those of us at the conference. We had heard that they wanted to close for good. And so we said, okay, well, we're going to take care of all the records and close the school. But then we heard the school board was still meeting. And they were convicted that God wanted them to have that school open for next school year. They spent a lot of time praying about it and a lot of time thinking and planning. And they kept saying, okay, God, here's our next step. Here's our next hurdle. If we're going to be open, you're going to have to open this door. And sure enough, that did happen. And then another school another area contacted me out of the blue. I wasn't expecting this one. It was the area of Shoto. Imagine that. And it was a person over there, Katie Harris, and she said, you know, a group of us would like to have a school over here. What would it take? And so I went through the list of things that would be needed, and she got a school board together right away. And they said, okay, well, it looks like it might be too much to get open for next school year. We need to, set our foundation and get all these things done and make sure parents are on board with it. But ironically, that started happening at a faster rate than they were expecting. And they said, well, at each hurdle, they said, well, with this hurdle, probably next year, or probably 2 years away, not this coming school year. But then it just kind of evaporated and they got it taken care of. And they have all their paperwork done initially, and they're working on their handbook currently. They're almost done with that. And they have a new logo, and they're rebranding themselves as well, and they'll be opening for next school year. They have the Board of Ed's approval to do that. Yeah, amen. And there was something else about that school I was going to share. I might have to come back to it. But they have been closed since 1999. And it's the group that's on the board, that group, they were kind of the last students that were students there. So they've grown up and they've had kids, and they want to have that for their own kids. All right. I'm also part of youth. Like I mentioned before, here's a picture of some of our adventurers and pathfinders. When I first came, there were 3 active Pathfinder clubs and maybe 1 or 2 adventurer clubs. And then about a year and a half ago, there were 9 Pathfinder clubs that were active. It was really neat to find all these areas that were really thinking that they needed to put youth first, and that was exciting. And then COVID hit, and it did affect the attendance of our Pathfinder clubs. So we've gone down. I think we're about 4 or 5 right now, and a couple of adventurer clubs. The Eastern Montana Explorers is one of those. They're out in Glendive, and they recently did a little Pathfinder Bible experience, and they were headed to the Union to do the Union level Pathfinder Bible experience. It used to be called the Bible Bowl. I think they've had some hurdles, so they may not be able to go. That was just this last week. Hopefully they'll get those figured out. The Pathfinders is going to be, we're going to have an NPUC camporee this year. It's going to be in Kalispell in September. So I'm excited that Montana gets to host it. We've been working at the NPUC level, the youth directors and Pathfinder directors, on planning that. We meet about once every 2 weeks on Zoom. And so you can see the theme is Let's Go, and our logo is that bear. So you'll be seeing more of that as we have more announcements coming out. This is just a screenshot of our summer camp for Camp Paxton. If you have kids or know of kids that are wanting to sign up, they need to go to the website and get signed up. It'll be exciting. That baptism there, I know that young man is a part of a community over here. It was really neat. That was 4th of July weekend. That's a very busy lake, Lake Sealy, or Sealy Lake. And it was during the middle of the day, and there had been boats back and forth, lots of loud music. And ironically, divinely, just during that baptism, everything just like cut to nothing. I don't know if you noticed that, but there weren't any boats. There wasn't the party atmosphere behind there. It was just for that baptism, and then suddenly there were boats again going back and forth. It was really neat. And also something else about that young man who gave his life to Christ that day. He had been a camper 2 years previously at the camp, and there had been a baptism at that camp as well that Pastor Jenkins did. I think. Maybe it was. I think you did. And he decided at that point that he wanted to give his life to Christ. And so he came back and told Pastor Carlisle that that's what he wanted to do. At summer camp, he wanted to give his life to Jesus. And then COVID hit, and we didn't have summer camp 1 year. And so the pastor here, he said, well, I can baptize you at the church. This is great, great news. We can study and do it here. And the young man, he said, no, I want to do it at summer camp. And so he waited another whole year, and then that happened this past summer. So it's really neat, these kids that do get baptized at summer camp. It provides a model for others there, like, oh, that's how, yeah, I want to have a relationship with Jesus too. So it was really neat. There's a quote from that story that I started with, the coffee story. Let me just pull it up here really quick. During that study, when they were trying to figure out how to break into Japan with coffee, the psychoanalyst, he said, when consumers have a childhood memory of something, like chicken noodle soup or mom's hot cup of coffee, that long embedded memory creates a bond between the consumer and the product. Now, I would like to just substitute product for Jesus for all of these evangelistic efforts that we have with our youth. We want to create that bond between our youth and Jesus.
So my name's Dane Bailey. I'm the principal of Mount Ellis Academy. I'm new this year, and I've been absolutely blessed just to kind of get to know everybody at the academy, to work with the conference, and I just want to share with you some of the things, exciting things, but also realistic challenges that are occurring at the academy this year. And I want to start with a story that's a pretty powerful testimony of the power of community. We have a young man who's new to our school this year. He's an adopted child. He came from Africa, and his parents are in Bozeman, and they've had him in the Bozeman public school system for most of his existence. He is now 11th grade, and he came to our school this year, and his parents have expressed exactly how excited they are that he's really accepted. They, about 2 months ago, sat me down and we had a talk, and they were talking about how he had been picked on racially. He just kind of is a shy kid, and he just felt so ostracized at public school, and they brought him to our school. They're not Adventists, they are Christians. They brought him to our school, and they were tearing up by how excited they were that he just felt so part of this school. He was loved, he was accepted. Our community, the kids we had, have created a witness to this individual, and the parents started asking about our church. The mother is health compromised, so they have asked for internet resources to learn more about who we are and what we are. And I think that's the power of the testimony of young people and community, and it excites me tremendously. Another thing we have going on campus this year is what's called our student chaplaincy group. We have chaplains for each grade level, but Pastor Jim, before he ditched me for the conference, started a student chaplaincy group, which I think is such a powerful thing. It's a group of kids who are responsible for a spiritual element on our campus. They get together, they led a student-led week of prayer early in the year. They've started 2 weekly student Bible studies, student-led. So they go to staff houses and they lead out in Bible studies. They've done a glow track distribution. They come up with ideas. I really wish I had more time to mentor them more directly. That is one of my regrets this year. But they're powerful. We have 1 senior. The rest of these are undergraduate kids, and they're there and they're leading out in these spiritual activities, and it's just such an awesome thing to see. I would love to see this grow into something where we can do, and they can have community or student-led opportunities to go out into the conference, go to the different churches, and do service. Whether it's leading out in a service, whether it's doing service at the church, I just think there's endless potential for something like this, and it's cool to see the kids getting excited about that. Really quickly, let's talk about some of the business of running Mount Ellis Academy. And so we are been very blessed. We've been in the black every month of this school year so far. That's not historically something we do very well, but this year we've been in the black every month so far. In January, we made a payment toward the debt of the conference that we owe the conference. We've been really, really blessed, and I'm going to switch, actually, before I get too far, If you look at the very top here, please notice our unrestricted income, which is the income of the school, and the operating expenses. Historically, it's kind of switched. Our expenses are higher than our income, but if you look at as of December this year, we actually our expenses are below our income. So we are in the black, and it's been every month this year so far. If you look at our history of our unrestricted net assets, 2 years ago we were $845,000 in the red. Currently we are actually in positive net assets. That's super exciting. We've been blessed with donations. Please note that's above and beyond just the difference of our budget and our operating expense. We've been blessed with donations. So that looks really, really great. That being said, I need to temper that with reality a little bit. What takes numerous years to get into does not take 6 months to get out of. One of the things we're looking at next year is a significant increase in quite a few of our expenses. Our insurance is going up. Our health insurance is going up. There's a 6% cost of living increase for salaries, so that's going up. So we have a lot more expenses next year, and so we're going to be pushing a lot of our unrestricted net assets that are, we're not using for operating into next year. So this looks really, really exciting. It is exciting. We're starting to get healthy, but we're not there yet. It's going to take quite a few years to get this turned around and in a position where it needs to be. So we're on a good path, but we're not there yet financially. Just some quick visioning for the future. One of the things I'm kind of excited about is we received a grant for technology this year. One of the things that's going to allow us to do is offer a distance learning element to Mount Ellis Academy. We are not something we were 30 years ago culturally. Parents are not really always willing to send away their 13, 14, even 15-year-olds. And so one of the things we're going to start to offer is a 9th and 10th grade distance learning option to the schools around the conference. So they can be live action with our classes. We'll have our classes being broadcast live over to these satellite locations, and students there can be facilitated by their local schools, and they can be part of Mount Ellis Academy. It's an opportunity for parents to get to know the teachers, for the kids to get to know their classmates. Once a quarter, we'll have those students come onto campus, participate in activities, get to know their classmates, get to know the teachers and the staff, and kind of ease them into that transition. So by their junior year, those parents know the school, know what we're about, understand the educational expectations, the spiritual expectations, and they're comfortable sending their kids to our school. Another thing, we are beginning a trade school program at Mount Ellis Academy. Starting next year, we will have an HVAC program, certification program. It'll start with the 11th and 12th grades. And one of the historical issues with this is, and the reason trade schools have gone out of Adventist education is because they've attempted to monetize our student labor, like the dairies. The kids would work at the dairy, and then they would sell their work, their labor, the milk or whatever they had made. And so the model we're looking at is not going to utilize that. We're going to actually create a trade school where the kids for junior and senior year are being trained in things, and then they take a certification test at the end so they can go directly into the workforce certified if that's their choice. We're not getting rid of our college preparatory program, but we're going to offer both. One of the ways we're going to fund this is by offering certification classes for community members in the evenings. So the tuition from those community members who come and get those certification courses and take those certification classes is going to help pay for the program that our kids are going to go through. So instead of monetizing their work, we're allowing the community to help subsidize that. Not only that, but it's an opportunity to provide something for the community that's necessary. One of the exciting parts of that is one of our families this year is, the father is the manager at the local Ford dealership, and he was talking about looking for a new auto mechanic. And he was saying they're struggling to find auto mechanics, and the position they're trying to fill, it's $250,000 a year. And I was, what? First off, I thought, okay, what do I need to do? But then I calmed down. I realized, I'm right where God has me. And then I thought, and so I said, what? And he said, the introduction of technology into the trades has changed trades completely. It has changed it completely. It's no longer somebody who just, school wasn't their thing and they kind of fall into this job or whatever it might have been in the past. It is now a highly technical, schooled position. One of the things we've talked about just a little bit, and I think I need to delve in deeper, is as we move forward, as we take this HVAC program and this, we can repurpose this model for different positions like plumbing, like electrical, like coding. One of the things he's talked about is he's going to approach Kendall, which is the dealership group that they're from, and see if they'd be willing to bring to us auto mechanics who could train our kids. And so we would have a partnership in the community with that entity, and not only would they help us to train our kids, but then our kids would have a connection in the community as they left school for employment. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm looking also into Gallatin Community College, see if they might have some people that would be able to train some of these trades. But the idea is this. I've already had a plumber come and talk to me. I've had a welder come and talk to me. God is opening these doors. And it's really, really kind of exciting. Land use. When I first got here, I mean, the first week I was here, people sat me down to talk to me about the land of Mount Ellis Academy and the need to make our land do something because our land just sits there. And I literally have spent months and months and months talking about land, visioning land, dreaming about land. It's been kind of crazy. And so just really quickly, we've looked into so many different things. Originally we had proposed, or when I came in, there were two proposals. One was the first step was to go for open air storage. In the Bear Canyon zoning district, to do open air storage, you need a solid fence, not just a shaded hurricane fence, but a solid fence. So to actually enclose 3 acres, do the groundwork to actually have open air storage, like where people park RVs and campers and stuff, would have cost us somewhere around just shy of $700,000. And so that would take us just shy of 10 years to recoup those expenses. So being the brilliant business major I was, I said, that's probably not a good idea. And then we looked at closed storage and realized that Bear Canyon Zoning District does not allow closed storage. The irony of all of this is, guess who started Bear Canyon Zoning District and established all of these rules? Mount Ellis Academy. So then we looked at the 362 acres. What can we do to develop there? We went to an engineering firm and learned that that whole 362 acres has what's called a high water table. So if you're going to develop anything, you need to be able to get rid of your waste, right? If we have rentals or whatever it might be, you need to get rid of your waste. Well, there's no way we can. We have 2 septic systems on site, but they are grandfathered in. So there's no way, because of our water table, we can put another septic system in. So maybe then what we do is we put a wastewater treatment plant in. Well, pricing that's $3 to $6 million. Don't have that on. If any of you have that, please feel free to let me know afterwards, but we don't have that. And so we looked into this, and currently the state doesn't allow runoff of effluent, so from a treatment plant into like Bear Creek or a creek or a river. So we're running into these issues. Somebody somewhere has solved this problem. We just need to put the time and the effort into figuring this one out. Let's see, I actually just about a week and a half ago got in touch with the DNRC about the ski hill. One of the things I learned is our lease is a seasonal lease, and it's a land use special use permit lease. That gives us certain things to be able to do, but we've visioned maybe turning the ski hill into something we use during the summer with biking trails and zip lines, where it would be an alternative for the youth of our conference to have a camp. Utilizing the ski hill a bit more with lodging, upgrading, that kind of stuff. And the reality is the lease we currently have, which expires just less than a year from now, wouldn't fit that. So we're looking at what the opportunities are for a commercial lease. And again, we were just informed that a commercial lease is about 5% of the appraised value of the land. I have no idea what that is at this point. I haven't gone there. I just learned this, but it was an interesting thing. So again, researching in that direction. And then we have the 120 acres. And if you see the way it's colored here, you've got this like reddish stripe through it. That's zoned R1, R5, residential 1-acre lots, residential 5-acre lots. It is zoned in such a way that once upon a time there was a vision that maybe we would raise this current school and build a new school there. That's not what the zoning allows. Or maybe put a conference camp there. Again, that's not what the zoning allows. So we looked into this. We found out that if you look right down here on the bottom, you see this large plot of land that's all owned by one individual who owns, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kenyon Noble, the lumber company. They have some stores in Bozeman. That gentleman is extremely wealthy. There are some large plots of land over here as well with some very well-off individuals. And so we are concerned that if we were going to go into a zoning fight with something that may not necessarily increase the value of somebody's property, we probably don't have the pockets deep enough to fight those. So I'm sharing with you that I've spent a lot of time looking into a lot of different things. I've been very blessed to have a very dedicated team looking into a lot of different things. We've been brainstorming ideas. I will come to constituency with an opportunity that I think is a step forward. But I just wanted to share, to let you know, I've been attempting to do my due diligence to understand the land use issues that we're encountering.
It's just very hard to do 3 weekends in a row and to do a Sabbath evening, and then we'll do another one. Tomorrow we don't, because we have another board meeting tomorrow, but we've been doing one on Sabbath evening and one on Sunday morning. But as we've talked about it, we feel like it is very important. And instead of doing one every 4 years, I said we were going to do one a year. And we were like, maybe I should have said one every other year to start with. But if you feel it's helpful, we want to communicate in a way that's going to bring you the information that you need as constituents. And if it's taking 3 weekends out of the year to just go crazy, we're willing to do that. But if is this something that you would like to do? I think that's something that we're willing to do, and we would love to get your feedback on that. But if you feel it's important, I think every year you'll probably see us, because we want to be able to share what's happening and get your input. That's it. If there's no other questions, you're welcome to come and talk to us afterward, but I'd like to pray to close. And thank you again for coming. Lord Jesus, this conference is yours. It does not belong to any of us, but we recognize the burden of leadership that you've placed upon us, Lord, and I thank you for these servant leaders that are all around me up here and their dedication to the work of spreading the gospel and discipling our children. Lord, as a staff in the conference office and at the academy, we surrender ourselves to you to be used by you. We need your wisdom in these days. You know all the twists and turns that are taking place in culture and society around us and the world at large. And I'm just praying, Lord, for your blessing on us as a conference office. I am asking for your blessing on all of us as church members here in Montana. God, you alone can bring revival and reformation. It's not something we create. And I ask for your Holy Spirit to be poured out on every church, on every member, on every family. And Lord, give us the wisdom and strength to do what you've called us to do, and that's help other people find their way into your arms and into the beautiful truths you've given to us as Seventh-day Adventists. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.